Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayantirye Nashtaprayeshu Avadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 11, Jad Bharat instructs King Rahugana, text 13 and 14 onwards. Kshetragya Atma Purushah Purana Sakshat Swayam Putirajah Pareshah Narayano Bhagwan Vasudevah Swamayayatmani Avadhiyamana Yatha Nila Sthavar Jangamana Atma Swarupena Nivishta Ishet Evam Paro Bhagwan Vasudevah Kshetragya Atmedam Anupravishtaha. There are two kinds of Kshetragya, the living entity as explained above and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is explained as follows. He is the all-pervading cause of creation. He is full in himself and is not dependent on others. He is perceived by hearing and direct perception. He is self-effulgent and does not experience birth, death, old age, or disease. He is a controller of all the demigods, beginning with Lord Brahma. He is called Narayan, and he is a shelter of living entities after the annihilation of this material world. He is full of all opulences, and he is a resting place of everything material. He is therefore known as Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By his own potency, he is present within the hearts of all living entities, just as the air or vital force is within the bodies of all beings, moving and non-moving. In this way, he controls the body. In his partial feature, the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters all bodies and controls them. So now Jad Bharat is speaking about Paramatma feature of the Lord. And he is another Kshetragya. Kshetragya means one who knows the body. But Paramatma is a real Kshetragya because he is the one who knows everything about this body. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sannivishta. Every living being is controlled by the Supreme Living Being, Paramatma, who resides within everyone's heart. He is a Purusha, the Purusha Avatar, who creates this material world. The first Purusha Avatar is Mahavishnu, and that Mahavishnu is a plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Krishna's first expansion is Baldev, and his next expansions are Vasudev, Sankarshan, Aniruddha, and Pradyumna. Vasudev is the original cause of the Brahm Jyoti, and the Brahm Jyoti is the expansion of the rays of the body of Vasudev. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is endowed with great power. The glowing effulgence of his transcendental form is the impartial Brahman, which is absolute, complete, and unlimited, and which displays the varieties of countless planets with their different opulences in millions and millions of universes. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is thus described in Bhagavad Gita. Maya tadam idam sarvam. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. This is the position of plenary expansions of Krishna as all-pervading Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So Krishna, Prabhupada says Krishna's first expansion is Baladev, and his next expansions are Chaturvyu, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Aniruddha, and Pradyumna. From Sankarshan comes next Narayan, and then from Narayan comes next second Chaturvyu, and then from second Sankarshan comes Mahavishnu. But from this Vasudev, Prabhupada says, he's a cause of the Brahm Jyoti. So Krishna himself, of course, they are all his expansions, and they are doing all the things. So Krishna himself has nothing to do. That's why Mahaprabhu says, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Ekila Ishvara Krishna are Sabhritya. Only Ishwar is Krishna. Rest everybody, even his expansions, his plenary portions, they all are his servants. Servants in the sense, they all are doing some activity or other for the pleasure of Krishna, for the upkeep, for the creation of the material world and this and that. Not Krishna himself has to do anything. That's that's why he is a CEO, Chief Enjoyment Officer. So he doesn't have to do anything. He's just busy playing on his flute and having his beautiful pastimes with his devotees. And from Mahavishnu, as we know, comes Garbhodaksha Vishnu and then Kshirodaksha Vishnu. That becomes a Paramatma feature, and that is what is in everybody's heart. Na yavadetam tanu bhrindrendra vidhuya mayam vayunodaya vimukta sango jatishatta sapatno vedatma tattvam bhamati tavat. My dear King Rahugana, as long as the conditioned soul accepts the material body and is not freed from the contamination of material enjoyment, and as long as he does not conquer his six enemies and come to the platform of self-realization, by awakening his spiritual knowledge, he has to wander among different places and different species of life in this material world. So as we studied earlier yesterday, that mind is the cause of all our bondage, entanglement. And as long as mind is not in control, then one has to wander in this material world, in different places, different species of life. Cannot avoid that. When one's mind is absorbed in the material conception, he thinks that he belongs to a particular nation, family, country, or creed. These are all called upadhis, designations, and one has to become freed from them. As long as one is not freed, he has to continue conditioned life and material existence. The human form of life is meant for cleansing away these misconceptions. If this is not done, one has to repeat the cycle of birth and death, and thus suffer all material conditions. So these upadhis, titles, that I am man, I am woman, I am Indian, I am American, and I'm this body, basically. This is what one has to get free of, cleanse away these misconceptions. But they're so deeply ingrained in us, it's not that easy to give them up. The soul is spiritual, the body is material. There is no connection between the two, actually. It is explained the connection between soul and the body is like oil and water. They never combine. Never. But because of the consciousness, which is covered over by the material nature, the connection between soul and body has become like if we have put some ink in water. When we put ink in water, it just dissolves in it. Cannot separate the two. But there is no connection, actually. And this process of yoga, bhakti, and all the procedures that we follow, the rules that we follow, it's basically, it is there to slowly clear up this misconception. Cheto darpana marjanam. That is going to happen. But slowly. And this is what Prabhupada is saying. As long as it is not done, one has to repeat the cycle of birth and death. Na yavadetan man atmalingam sansara tapavapanam janasya yachoka mohamaya Raga Lobha Varanubandham Mamatam Vidhatte. The soul's designation, the mind, is a cause of all tribulations in the material world. As long as this fact is unknown to the conditioned living entity, he has to accept the miserable condition of the material body and wander within this universe in different positions. Because the mind is affected by disease, lamentation, illusion, attachment, greed, and enmity, it creates bondage and a false sense of intimacy within this material world. The mind is a cause of both material bondage and liberation. The impure mind thinks, I'm this body. The pure mind knows that he is not the material body. Therefore, the mind is considered to be the root of all material designations. Until the living entity is aloof from the association and contaminations of this material world, the mind will be absorbed in such material things as birth, death, disease, illusion, attachment, greed, and enmity. In this way, the living entity is conditioned and he suffers material miseries. So until the living entity is aloof from the association and contaminations of this material world, the mind will be absorbed in such material things as birth, death, disease, illusion, attachment, greed, and enmity. So, and they are so deeply ingrained, all these issues. It just looks impossible to get out of it. And this is what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Devi Yesha Gunamai Mam Maya Duratyaya. This is all Maya's games. Illusion is what Maya, and then rest everything follows that. And these are all Maya's games. And the thing is, those who are studying this, those who are trying to make progress in devotional life, they know all this. At least theoretically, we know it's all Maya's games, but still cannot get out of it. And then Krishna said, Devi Esha Gunmai. And he says, Mame Vye Prapadyante, Maya Meta Taranti. Just take shelter of me. And I'll take you above. It goes beyond Maya, beyond the control of Maya. That shelter, that taking shelter, the surrender, that is the difficult part. Because what happens, we don't want to take shelter. We think I'm in my comfort zone in Maya, and who knows what will happen if I leave everything? But nobody's asking to leave everything. Who knows if I spend too much time doing bhakti? Because there are so many people telling me not to do bhakti right now. It will be problem and this and that. So many things people will say. And mind will tend to drift towards them. Because that is where we find our shelter, our well-beings. These are my well-wishers. But they don't know. Our eternal well-wisher is Krishna. And he sends his representatives as Srila Prabhupada as a well-wisher to tell us what is right for us. The mind keeps on playing games, So difficult. Bhratri Vaimenam Tadabhraviryam Upekshaya Dhittam Apramataha Guror Haresh Charanopasanaastro Jahi Velikam Swayam Atma Mosham. The uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. If one neglects it or gives it a chance, it will grow more and more powerful and will become victorious. Although it's not factual, it is very strong. It covers the constitutional position of the soul. O king, please try to conquer this mind by the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Do this with great care. There is one easy weapon with which the mind can be conquered: neglect. The mind is always telling us to do this or that. Therefore, we should be very expert in disobeying the mind's orders. Gradually, the mind should be trained to obey the orders of the soul. It is not that one should obey the orders of the mind. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say that to control the mind, one should beat it with shoes many times just after awakening and again before going to sleep. In this way, one can control the mind. This is the instruction of the Shastras. If one does not do so, one is doomed to follow the dictations of the mind. Another bona fide process is to abide strictly by the orders of the spiritual master and engage in the Lord's service. Then the mind will be automatically controlled. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has instructed Srila Rupa Goswami, Brahmanda Brahmit, when one receives the seed of devotional service by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's real life begins. If one abides by the orders of the spiritual master, by the grace of Krishna, he is freed from the service to the mind. So many instructions by Jad Bharat to King Rahugana just to instruct him again and again not to listen to the mind. This mind is very tricky, and it can just entangle us if it is not our friend. And the Prabhupada says the best weapon to control the mind, neglect it. But then what to do? Follow the instructions. Means with the intelligence. Intelligence, we can control the mind. So intelligence can be sharpened by following the instructions of spiritual master and engage in the Lord's service. So again and again, we get up in the morning, mind plays games. We start chanting, again mind plays games. And we want to do something, again mind plays games. But this is what, of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj says, beat up with shoes 100 times in the morning and with the stick 100 times before you go to bed. Means to control the mind. Tell him, I'm not going to listen to you. You have to listen to me. So there ends the 11th chapter, and we can start the 12th chapter, entitled Conversation between Maharaj Rahugana and Jad Bharat. Text 1. Rahugana Vacha, Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya, Swarupa Tuchi Krita Vigrahaya, Namo Avadhuta Dvijya Bandhu Linga, Niguda Nitya Anubhavaya Tubhyam. King Rahugana said, O most exalted personality, you're not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By the influence of your true self, all kinds of contradiction in the Shastras have been removed. In the dress of a friend of a Brahman, you are hiding your transcendental blissful position. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. From the Brahma Samhita, we understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. Rishabdev was a direct incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. His son Bharat Maharaj, who was now acting as the Brahman, Jad Bharat, had received his body from the cause of all causes. Therefore, he is addressed as Karana Vigrahaya. And this is what King Rahugana said. You're not different because you're basically representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you're not different from him. So all kinds of contradictions in Shastras have been removed. So I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So even King Rahugana, he forgot his position as a king. Now he knew who's a real guru and he had to pay obeisances. Jivaram Maryatasya Yatha Gadam Sat Nitad nidag dagdhasya yatha himambha kudehamaana hi vidishta drishte brahman vachaste amritam aushadham me. O best of the Brahmins, my body is filled with dirty things, and my vision has been bitten by the serpent of pride. Due to my material conceptions, I am diseased. Your nectarian instructions are the proper medicine for one suffering from such a fever, and they are cooling waters for one scorched by the heat. The conditioned soul has a body full of dirty things, bones, blood, urine, stool, and so forth. Nonetheless, the most intelligent men in this material world think they are these combinations of blood, bone, urine, and stool. If this is so, why can't other intelligent men be made with these ingredients, which are so readily available? The entire world is going on under the bodily conception and creating a hellish condition, unfit for any gentleman's living. The instructions given to Maharaj Rahugana by Jad Bharat are very valuable. They like the medicine that can save one from a snake bite. The snake bite means a snake of ignorance. And when a snake bites, one cannot survive. So ignorance, when ignorance bites, one's spirituality cannot survive. So the Vedic instructions are like the nectar and cool water for one suffering from scorching heat. So in the material world, everybody is suffering. Sansara davanal ida loka. Sansara davanal. The sansara is like a forest fire. Everybody is suffering from scorching heat. Only way one can be relieved is by following the instructions of a guru. Tasmad bhavantamam sanchayartham prakshyami paschadaduna subhodam adhyatma yoga gratitam tavoktam makyahi kotuhala chetaso me. Whatever doubts I have about a particular subject matter, I shall ask you about later. For the time being, these mysterious yoga instructions you have given me for self-realization appear very difficult to understand. Please repeat them in a simple way so that I can understand them. My mind is very inquisitive and I want to understand this clearly. The Vedic literature instructs Tasmad Gurum Prapadyat Devta Jigyasu Shreyautama. An intelligent man must be very inquisitive to know the transcendental science deeply. Therefore, one must approach a guru as spiritual master. Although Jad Bharat explained everything to Maharaj Rahugana, it appears that his intelligence was not perfect enough to understand clearly. He therefore requested a further explanation. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Tadvidhi Pranipate. The student must approach a spiritual master and surrender unto him fully, Pranipate. He must also caution him in order to understand his instructions. One should not only surrender to the spiritual master, but also render loving service unto him, Sevaya, so that the spiritual master will be pleased with the student and explain the transcendental subject matter more clearly. A challenging spirit before the spiritual master should be avoided if one is at all interested in learning the Vedic instructions in depth. So King Rahugana, he admitted that he didn't understand everything. So please, he said, repeat them in a simple way. Although from whatever we studied, it sounded pretty simple. But King Rahugana, he wanted everything to be classified. So the real way of approaching is to approach humbly and surrender and serve, and then ask questions. Not in a challenging spirit. This is what Prabhupada saying. It should be avoided, challenging spirit. But at the same time, questions have to be asked. Other day in our interfaith meeting, this was the topic, scriptures and the faith. And these questions were given to all of us, asking that whether one should have doubts about the scriptures, whether one should clear the doubts or not. So, except one person, not going to name the religion, everybody said, yes, one has a right to clear up his doubts. Without clearing up the doubts, how is it going to just follow properly? It's going to be by like blind following. But one person was very adamant. No, he said, no, these are all high topics. We cannot understand with our brains. So how can we even think of asking questions? But this is the beauty of Vedic scriptures. Everywhere it's all questions and answers, questions and answers. Of course, answers or especially the topics of spiritual world, one cannot understand them with his material intelligence, sure. But first of all, one can ask questions how to make progress spiritually, and then slowly, when he makes progress, and the same descriptions of the spiritual world, which we cannot understand earlier, more we make advancement, more these descriptions will become clearer because they will be realized. So, but to come to that level, one has to ask questions and clarify the doubts and make further progress and follow the instructions. Without that, we cannot make progress. We cannot just have blind faith and keep on following. Yada yogeshwara drishyamanam kriyafalam sadvyavara moolam nahiyanjasa tattva vimarshanaya bhavanam ushmin brahmate manome. O master of yogic power, you said that fatigue resulting from moving the body here and there is appreciated by direct perception. But actually, there is no fatigue. It simply exists as a matter of formality. By such inquiries and answers, no one can come to the conclusion of the absolute truth. Because of your presentation of this statement, my mind is a little disturbed. Formal inquiries and answers about the bodily conception do not constitute knowledge of the absolute truth. Knowledge of the absolute truth is quite different from the formal understanding of the bodily pains and pleasures. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna informs Arjuna that the pains and pleasures experienced in relations to the body are temporary. They come and go. One should not be disturbed by them, but should tolerate them and continue with spiritual realization. So all these temporary things, bodily pains and pleasures, and understanding them, understanding how body is different from soul, it's good, but these are all temporary things. We have to come to the level of understanding the absolute truth. That is more important. But to come to that, one has to keep on practicing. So anyway, we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, we'll stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna, Jai
Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada.